Section 3, The Final Confrontation. The vigilant flame hurtled forward, its engines roaring as it closed the distance to the Aerithrax flagship, the enemy ship looming larger with each passing second. Commander Alya's hands gripped the controls with white-knuckled determination, her gaze fixed on the towering vessel ahead. Around her, the bridge was filled with the sounds of warning alarms and the faint hum of damaged systems struggling to stay online. "Rock, increase power to the forward shields," she ordered, her voice a razor-edged whisper of determination. "We're going to need everything we've got to punch through their defenses." Rock's fingers flew over his console. "Forward shields at maximum, Commander," he replied, his voice betraying a hint of tension. They all knew what was at stake, and what the consequences might be if they failed. Alya took a deep breath, glancing around at her crew. Each of them looked back at her with a resolute expression, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the Aerithrax flagship in the distance. For a moment, she felt a surge of pride. They weren't just soldiers, they were warriors, each willing to sacrifice everything to protect the lives of countless billions on Earth below. As they neared the flagship, another barrage of plasma fire erupted from the Aerithrax vessels. The vigilant flame rocked violently, but the crew held steady, bracing themselves against the impact. Alya glanced at the damage report flashing on her screen. Shields were down to 15%, and several key systems were dangerously close to failure. "Commander, the shields won't hold much longer," Farah called out, her voice strained as she rerouted power to critical systems. "If we take another hit like that, we're done for." "We're almost there," Alya replied, her tone calm despite the chaos around her. "Just a little closer." Beside her, Major Quinn and her squad huddled together, their expressions grim but determined. Quinn's gaze was fixed on the Aerithrax flagship, her eyes blazing with the fierce resolve of someone who had come too far to turn back now. The human soldier named Mason, still clutching the metal case that had once held the final key, gave her a silent nod. And then, they reached the threshold. "Everyone, brace yourselves," Alya shouted, her voice ringing out over the blaring alarms. In a split-second maneuver, Alya directed the vigilant flame into a steep dive, aiming straight for the neural core of the Aerithrax flagship, a massive, pulsating orb embedded deep within the ship's hull. The Aerithrax's neural systems, the source of their synchronization and control, were vulnerable in that moment, just as the flagship was still reeling from the effects of the final key's disruption. "Fire everything we've got," Alya commanded. Farah activated the ship's remaining arsenal, unleashing a relentless barrage of plasma bolts, missile fire, and railgun blasts. The combined firepower struck the neural core dead-on, sending shockwaves rippling through the Aerithrax vessel. The core flickered and dimmed, its pulsating light stuttering as the Aerithrax systems struggled to regain stability. But then, a new threat emerged. From the depths of the flagship, an enormous figure appeared on Alya's view screen. It was an Aerithrax warrior, a towering creature covered in thick, organic armor, its four eyes gleaming with a mixture of fury and determination. The creature held a massive weapon, a blade-like structure crackling with energy, and it seemed to be glaring directly at the vigilant flame. "Commander Alya," a voice echoed over the comms, a cold, metallic sound that sent a chill down her spine. "I am Zargath, warlord of the Aerithrax. You think your feeble attack can disrupt the path of conquest? You are but insects before the might of the Aerithrax." Alya clenched her jaw, her eyes narrowing. "We may be insects to you, Zargath, but even insects can sting." The warlord's laughter filled the comms. "Then come, insect. Show me the strength of your sting." The Aerithrax warlord raised his weapon, and within seconds, the flagship unleashed a focused energy beam, a deadly ray of pure, crackling plasma that lanced out toward the vigilant flame. Alya barely had time to shout a warning before the beam struck the ship, sending a powerful jolt through the bridge. Sparks flew, consoles exploded, and the lights flickered as the ship's systems overloaded under the assault. Alia was thrown against her console, pain shooting through her shoulder, but she forced herself to stand. "Damage report," she shouted over the chaos. "Engines are down," Rock replied, coughing through the smoke. "Shields are gone, and life support is compromised." We're not going anywhere, Commander." Alia's heart sank. They were trapped, unable to escape, with the full force of the Aerithrax bearing down on them. But as she looked around at her crew, she saw the same fire in their eyes that had carried them through countless battles. They weren't giving up, not yet. "Quinn," she said, turning to the Major, "can your team hold off the Aerithrax on board?" Quinn nodded, her jaw set. "We'll give it everything we've got." Alia met her gaze with gratitude. "Then we make our stand here." She activated the ship's internal defenses, rerouting what little power remained to the automated turrets lining the hallways. The Aerithrax drones had begun to breach the ship, clawing their way through the hull with relentless precision, their razor-sharp appendages tearing through metal as they swarmed toward the bridge. Quinn and her squad took position, each soldier bracing for the fight of their lives. As the first wave of drones broke through, the ship erupted in a flurry of gunfire and plasma bolts. The humans fought with a ferocity that matched the Aerithrax's savagery, their weapons blazing as they held the line, refusing to yield an inch of ground. Meanwhile, Alia kept her gaze on the view screen, watching as Zargath continued to taunt them, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are weak, Commander. Your people are weak. You think you can stop the Aerithrax with your pathetic resistance?" Alia's jaw clenched. She refused to let this warlord see her fear, even as the bridge around her crumbled. "We may not have the firepower to match you, Zargath, but we have something you don't. We have the will to fight, to protect, to survive. And that's something you'll never understand." The warlord laughed, his voice a chilling sound that reverberated through the ship. "Then prepare to be crushed under the might of the Aerithrax." But Alia wasn't about to let him win. As Quinn and her squad continued to hold off the drones, she formulated a desperate plan. If they couldn't destroy the Aerithrax flagship with conventional weapons, then she would use the ship itself as a weapon. "Rock," she said quietly, her voice laced with steely resolve. "Initiate core overload. We're going to take this ship and everything on it down with us." Rock's eyes widened, but he nodded, understanding the gravity of her decision. "Core overload initiated, Commander. We have 5 minutes until detonation." Alia's gaze flicked to the view screen, where Zargatha's image remained, his face twisted into a sneer. "You think this will stop me? I am eternal. The Aerithrax are eternal." "Not anymore," Alia replied, her voice calm and unyielding. "This ends here." The Aerithrax warlord let out a roar of fury, his image flickering as the neural core began to destabilize. But he wasn't finished yet. With one final command, he unleashed a swarm of drones, each one programmed to self-destruct in a last-ditch attempt to obliterate the vigilant flame. Quinn's squad fought valiantly, fending off the drones with every ounce of strength they had, but the relentless assault was taking its toll. One by one, her soldiers fell, their bodies littered across the bridge, their sacrifice buying Alia the time she needed to carry out her plan. Alia watched as the core's countdown ticked down, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2. Every second felt like an eternity, each one a heartbeat in the life-and-death struggle unfolding around her. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the end. And then, at the last moment, a glimmer of hope appeared. On the outskirts of the battle, a small group of Earth's ships, battered and barely functional, had managed to break through the Aerithrax line. They were signaling to the vigilant flame, their message a beacon of light in the darkness. "Commander Alia," a voice crackled over the comms. "This is Captain Reese of Earth's 22nd Tactical Squadron. We've come to get you out of here." Alia's heart surged with hope. Captain Reese, we're initiating a core overload. You need to evacuate before it's too late. But Reese's voice was firm. With all due respect, Commander, we're not leaving without you. Prepare for emergency extraction. We're sending shuttles your way now. As the Vigilant flame neared detonation, Alia turned to her remaining crew. Everyone, to the shuttles. Move, now. They scrambled toward the docking bay, moving as fast as they could through the debris-filled corridors. The Aerithrax drones were relentless, but Quinn and her few remaining soldiers fought them off, covering the crew's retreat with a fierce determination. In the final moments, as the core's countdown neared zero, Alia and her crew boarded the waiting shuttles, launching away from the Vigilant flame just as the core reached critical mass. The explosion was blinding, a massive shockwave tearing through the Aerithrax flagship, ripping it apart from the inside. The crew watched in awe as the flagship disintegrated, its once mighty structure reduced to a smoldering cloud of debris. The Aerithrax ships around it faltered, their neural synchronization shattered, leaving them vulnerable to Earth's remaining forces. As they sped away from the destruction, Alia felt a bittersweet pang in her chest. The Vigilant flame was gone, but it had served its purpose, striking a blow against the Aerithrax that would be remembered for generations. On board the shuttle, Major Quinn turned to her, exhaustion etched into her face, but a glimmer of triumph in her eyes. We did it, Commander. Against all odds, we did it. Alia nodded, her gaze fixed on the remnants of the battlefield. Yes, we did. And we showed them that even the smallest spark of hope can ignite a fire. The Aerithrax had been dealt a crushing defeat, their flagship destroyed, their forces scattered. It was a victory hard won, and as the shuttle drifted through the wreckage, Alia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Aerithrax weren't invincible, and the Alliance, and humanity, had proven their resilience. In that moment, she knew that, whatever came next, they would face it together. Section 4, Resolution and Reflection. The rescue shuttles coasted through the debris-strewn battlefield, silent save for the hum of their engines. Inside one shuttle, Alia sat with her crew, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over her as they pulled away from the remnants of the Vigilant flame and the shattered Aerithrax flagship. The destruction of both ships marked a turning point in the battle, but the cost of victory lay heavy on her shoulders. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then, as if sensing the collective tension, Major Quinn broke it with a quiet, almost weary chuckle. Well, Commander, she said, glancing at Alia with a wry grin, looks like Earth owes you a serious thank you. Drinks on us if we get back. Alia managed a tired smile, leaning back against her seat. I think I'll hold you to that, Major. Captain Reese's voice crackled over the comms. Commander Alia, we've received word from Earth Command. The Aerithrax fleet is in full retreat. Whatever we did to their flagship's neural core disrupted their entire formation. Earth's forces are pursuing the remaining vessels, and it looks like the Aerithrax are pulling back to regroup. Alia exhaled slowly, allowing the reality of their success to sink in. The Aerithrax, once a looming, unbeatable force, were finally retreating. The combined efforts of the Alliance and Earth's fleet had thrown them off balance, forcing them to reconsider their assault on humanity. As the shuttles maneuvered through the remnants of the battlefield, Alia caught glimpses of Earth's cities below, some scarred, others still aflame from the Aerithrax bombardment. But against that backdrop of destruction, she saw something even more powerful: resilience. The humans were already beginning to mobilize rescue and repair crews, determined to rebuild despite the devastation. One of Earth's officers, a young lieutenant with a bandage over one eye, approached her. Commander Alia, he said, voice brimming with respect, Earth Command wants to speak with you as soon as you're ready. They've asked me to personally thank you and your crew for your bravery. Alia nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest that overcame the exhaustion. Tell them it was an honor to fight alongside Earth's forces. As the shuttle entered the atmosphere, the sight of Earth's surface filled the viewports. They flew over cities left partially in ruins and fields where battles had scorched the land, yet Alya couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. Humanity had endured. And if they could survive an encounter with the Erythrax, perhaps they would survive anything the galaxy threw at them. Upon landing at a temporary base, Earth Command had set up outside one of the battered cities. Alya and her crew were greeted by a small gathering of Earth's leaders and soldiers. There were no parades, no fanfare, only a quiet, respectful nod from every face she passed. It was the solemn acknowledgement of survivors who understood the cost of what they had achieved. Alya stepped forward, approaching General Navarro, Earth's ranking officer overseeing the resistance efforts. His uniform was scuffed, his face lined with exhaustion, but his eyes held a fierce pride. "Commander Alya," he said, extending a hand. "We owe you and the Alliance more than words can express. Without your intervention, this could have ended very differently." She shook his hand firmly. "We're allies, General. It was never a question of whether we'd come to your aid. Earth has proven itself more than worthy of the Alliance's trust." Navarro nodded, his gaze shifting to the remnants of her crew and Major Quinn's battered squad. "Your people fought with remarkable courage," he said, a hint of admiration in his tone. "And as for Major Quinn's team, I've never seen such determination in the face of certain death." Quinn, standing nearby, managed a faint smile, though the grief of the losses her squad had suffered weighed visibly on her. "We did what we had to," she replied. "The Erythrax underestimated us. They thought they'd crush Earth without a fight. And they'll remember this day," Navarro replied solemnly. "Because you and your team reminded them that humans don't surrender." The general's words were met with a round of nods, a shared sense of pride and relief. As they stood in the makeshift base, surrounded by remnants of both Alliance and Earth forces, Alya felt the weight of the battle easing slightly from her shoulders. They had not only defended Earth, they had sent a message to the Erythrax and any other power in the galaxy that underestimated humanity. As the Alliance and Earth soldiers dispersed to attend to their wounds and regroup, Alya caught sight of Mason, the soldier who had carried the final key. He was seated on a crate, the empty metal case resting beside him, his gaze distant. She approached him quietly, taking a seat next to him. "Hell of a mission, wasn't it?" she said, breaking the silence. Mason looked up, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "That's one way to put it, Commander. I don't think I'll ever look at a metal case the same way again." Alya chuckled softly, a rare moment of levity in the wake of so much loss. "We all did things today that none of us thought we could do. And we survived, Mason. That's something to be proud of." He nodded, his gaze drifting to the distant horizon. I just wish the others had made it. They gave everything, and it's hard to think they won't see what they helped save." Alya placed a hand on his shoulder. "They knew what was at stake, Mason. And in the end, they helped save an entire planet. Their legacy lives on in every survivor here." The soldier nodded, blinking back the grief in his eyes, before he rose and offered her a salute. Alya returned it, her heart heavy yet filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Later that evening, as the makeshift base quieted down, Alya found herself standing alone outside, looking up at the night sky. She saw the faint, lingering trails of smoke from the wreckage still drifting in orbit, reminders of the Erythrax's invasion. But against that backdrop of darkness, the stars shone brightly, indifferent to the struggles below yet offering a quiet reassurance that life, in all its forms, would continue. Quinn approached, joining her in silence for a moment before speaking. "The Erythrax will remember this day. They'll regroup, rebuild, and probably come back stronger than before." Alya nodded, her gaze steady. "And when they do, we'll be ready for them. Earth's proven itself as more than just another planet. It's a force the galaxy can't ignore." Quinn smirked. And a stubborn one at that. They'll have to pry every inch of ground from our cold, dead hands if they want it. They shared a moment of mutual respect, understanding that this alliance between Earth and the galactic forces was now forged in fire. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as allies, united not only by a shared enemy but by a bond of resilience and resolve. The next morning, Earth Command hosted a small ceremony in honor of those who had fallen. It was a somber event, held under the open sky, with makeshift markers placed for each lost soldier and crew member. Alia stood among the crowd, her gaze resting on the names engraved on the markers. She would carry their memory with her, a reminder of the price they had paid to protect a planet that was not even her own. Afterward, General Navarro approached her, a glint of hope in his eyes. Earth will rebuild, Commander. And will be ready if the Aerithrax ever decide to return. Alia nodded, her expression determined. We'll continue to work together, General. The Alliance will support Earth's efforts, and will make sure that the galaxy understands what it means to stand against us. As she prepared to leave, Alia took one last look at the survivors around her, the humans and Alliance soldiers who had stood together against impossible odds. They were scarred, weary, and irrevocably changed, yet they stood tall, defiant in the face of whatever the future held. Boarding the Alliance shuttle that would return her to the fleet, Alia reflected on what they had achieved. The Aerithrax had been a nearly unstoppable force, but together, humanity and the Alliance had proven that strength was not just a matter of weaponry or technology. It was a matter of spirit, of the courage to defy insurmountable odds, and the will to protect what mattered most. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving Earth behind, Alia allowed herself a moment to close her eyes, breathing deeply as a sense of peace settled over her. They had won a battle, but the war for survival would continue. And when it did, they would be ready. She looked out the viewport, her gaze fixed on the stars that lay beyond. Somewhere out there, the Aerithrax were regrouping, preparing for the next stage of their conquest. But Alia knew that when they returned, they would find Earth and the Alliance waiting, stronger and more united than ever. As the shuttle streaked through the atmosphere and back into the vastness of space, Alia whispered a silent vow, to remember those who had fallen, to honor their sacrifice, and to continue the fight for the future they had helped secure. And with that promise sealed in her heart, she turned her focus forward, ready to face whatever challenges awaited in the endless frontier of the galaxy.